You think time slowing down at light speed is about clocks ticking slower? Like some cosmic slow motion replay? That's not a little wrong. That's the wrong category entirely. Here's something that should unsettle you. Right now, as you sit here, photons from a star that exploded 12 billion years ago are slamming into the upper atmosphere above your head. Those photons have crossed distances so vast that the human brain physically cannot picture them. They've traveled for longer than the Earth has existed, longer than our sun has burned, and for those photons, for every single one of them, not a heartbeat has passed, not a nanosecond, not any sliver of duration you could name. 12 billion years for you, zero for them, not approximately zero. Mathematically, ontologically measured in a lab zero, that should bother you. And here's what's going to really wreck your evening. There's a single equation, one line of mathematics that explains why this happens. And buried inside that equation is a division by zero. Not the kind your math teacher told you was underfined, the kind that tells you an entire category of existence doesn't apply. Time doesn't slow down for light. Time doesn't exist for light. And by the end of this, I'm going to show you that you right now, sitting perfectly still, are moving at the speed of light. And the reason you don't notice is the deepest, strangest, most consequential fact in all of physics. But first, I need to destroy everything you think you know about speed. And if this is the kind of thing that keeps you up at night, if you want more of these, subscribe. That's all I'll say about that. Let's go do something for me. Hold your hand in front of your face. Now move it slowly from left to right. You just did something impossible. I mean that. What you just did violates common sense so profoundly that it took the most brilliant physicist in human history 10 years to figure out what was actually happening. You moved your hand through space. Obvious. But here's what you didn't notice. By moving through space, you moved less through time. Your hand aged slightly less than your face during that motion. Not metaphorically, measurably. Your fingertips are now, and I'm not being poetic here, fractionally younger than your nose. The difference is absurd. We're talking about a number so small that no instrument on Earth could detect it, but it's real. It's demanded by the same equations that make your GPS work, that predict eclipses to the second, that let us photograph black holes. The math is merciless. And the math says when you moved your hand, you traded time for space. You're thinking, that's cute, but it's so small it doesn't matter, and at the speed of a hand wave, you're right, it doesn't matter practically. But the principle behind it, that principle is the entire game, because the principle doesn't change at higher speeds. It just gets louder. Let me show you what loud looks like. 50 miles above your head right now, a cosmic ray, a proton screaming across the universe at 99.999% the speed of light, just slammed into a nitrogen molecule in our atmosphere. The collision was violent. Temperatures in that microscopic impact zone hit 1,000,000,000,000 degrees. Debris sprayed everywhere, and one piece of that debris was a particle called a muon. A muon is like an electron's heavier, unstable cousin. It's born, it exists, and then it decays. Average lifespan, 2.2 microseconds. That's 0.00000022 seconds. Blink and you've missed 1,000 muon lifetimes. Now here's the problem. At nearly light speed, in 2.2 microseconds, a muon can travel about 660 meters. Call it half a mile. But it was born 50 miles up. Simple arithmetic. The muon should die at least 49 miles before reaching the ground. We should detect almost zero muons at sea level. We detect 10,000 per square meter per minute. They're passing through your body right now. Through the screen you're looking at, through the floor beneath you. Impossible, unless their internal clocks are lying. Unless those muons, screaming through the atmosphere at 99.9999% light speed, are experiencing time so slowly that their 2.2 microsecond lifespan stretches into something long enough to survive the trip. That's not what's happening, though. Not exactly. The muon isn't experiencing slow time. The muon is experiencing normal time, 2.2 microseconds, same as always. But from its perspective, the 50-mile atmosphere has compressed. Squished down, length contraction. The muon sees a journey of less than half a mile. Easy trip. Dies right on time, same result. Two different explanations. Both measured, both verified, both real. The universe keeps strict books, but different observers get different receipts. But here's the part that matters. This isn't an exception. This isn't some weird quantum edge case. This is happening to you right now. At every speed you've ever traveled, the effect is just too small to feel until it isn't. Here's where I need you to forget everything you learned in school about speed. Speed is not distance divided by time. That's the formula. But the formula is a shadow of the truth, the way a footprint is a shadow of the animal that made it. The footprint doesn't tell you what the animal looks like. The formula doesn't tell you what speed actually is. Here's what speed actually is. You're always moving at exactly one speed through the fabric of space-time. And that speed is c, the speed of light, 299,792,458 meters per second. Right now, sitting still, you are hurtling through space-time at 670 million miles per hour. I know how that sounds. It sounds like I'm being dramatic or metaphorical. I'm not. This is the central claim of special relativity, and it's been verified to a precision that makes your bathroom scale look like a wild guess. Here's how it works. Space-time is one thing, not space and time, space-time, a single four-dimensional fabric. You are always moving through this fabric at the speed of light. But you have a choice. Well, not a choice, a budget, a fixed allocation. You can spend that speed on moving through space or on moving through time, but the total is locked. It's always c. Sit perfectly still. Spend 0 on space. Every drop of your speed budget flows through time. You age at maximum rate. Seconds tick at full speed. Tuesday becomes Wednesday becomes Thursday time, screams forward. Now stand up and walk across the room. You've just diverted a tiny fraction of your speed budget from time into space. Your clock, the clock of your atoms, the clock of your biology, the clock of your existence slows down by a whisker, an undetectable whisker, but the accounting is exact. Drive a car. More budget shifts to space. Less goes to time. Your clock slows a bit more. Fly in a jet. The shift grows. Still tiny, but now with atomic clocks, we can actually measure it. We have measured it. In 1971, two physicists named Hafele and Keating put cesium atomic clocks on commercial airplanes, flew them around the world. When the clocks came back, they disagreed with identical clocks left on the ground. By exactly the amount special relativity predicted. Not roughly. Exactly. This is not theory. This is the most precisely confirmed prediction in the history of science. So you're thinking, okay, I get it. Moving through space slows you through time. It's a trade-off. And at light speed, you've spent the whole budget on space, so there's nothing left for time. Time stops, done. And you're almost right, but you're standing on a trapdoor. Because time stops is still a description from your perspective, from the outside looking in. You watching a photon calculate that its clock reads 0. But here's the question you haven't asked yet. What does 0 time mean from the inside? You're thinking, well, the photon would experience a frozen moment, an eternal present, an infinite now. That's the most natural thing to imagine. It's also completely wrong. And understanding why it's wrong is the part that changes how you see reality. But I need to build one more piece before we go there. Your phone can tell you where you are on Earth within 3 meters. A device in your pocket, pinpointing your location, on a spinning planet that's orbiting a star at 67,000 miles per hour, which is itself orbiting a galactic center at 500,000 miles per hour, accurate to the width of a car. How? 31 satellites? Each one 12,550 miles above your head. Each one carrying an atomic clock so precise it loses less than 1 second every 300,000 years. Your phone listens to 4 or more of these satellites simultaneously, compares the timestamps of their signals, and calculates the tiny differences in arrival time to triangulate your position. Now here's the conspiracy that nobody talks about. Those satellites move at 8,700 miles per hour. At that speed, special relativity slows their clocks by 7 microseconds per day. In 7 microseconds, light, which is what GPS signals are, travels over a mile. After 1 day, your GPS would be off by a mile. After a week, useless. After a month, your phone would think you're in the ocean. But wait, there's another effect working the other direction. Those satellites are high up, farther from Earth's gravitational pull. And general relativity, Einstein's later, even deeper theory says clocks run faster in weaker gravity. This adds 45 microseconds per day going the other way. Two effects, opposite directions. They don't cancel. The net result? Satellite clocks run 38 microseconds faster per day than ground clocks. So engineers at Lockheed Martin, before launching each satellite, deliberately detune the atomic clocks. They slow them down, they pre-program relativistic corrections into the hardware. Every satellite in the GPS constellation carries Einstein's equations in its firmware. Open your Maps app right now, watch that blue dot find you. That dot is relativistic physics, time dilation running in real time in your pocket. Every ride you've ordered, every delivery you've tracked, every wrong turn your GPS saved you from, Einstein measured, engineered, built. This isn't a thought experiment, this is infrastructure. Now I owe you an answer. What does zero time actually feel like for a photon? What is it like to be light? Here's the answer. And I need you to hold on to something because the floor is about to drop. The question is meaningless. Not hard to answer, not mysterious. Meaningless. Like asking what is north of the North Pole? The question has the grammatical structure of a real question, but it refers to nothing. Here's why. To experience something, anything, you need a before and an after. You need a moment and then a next moment, and the gap between them. Experience is temporal. It requires duration. It requires a sequence of states. First I was here, then I was there. First I felt this, then I felt that. A photon has no sequence, no before, no after. The moment it leaves a star and the moment it enters your eye are not two events separated by zero time. They are the same event, one event, not connected by a short duration, not connected by a vanishing duration, not connected at all because there's nothing to connect. There's no bridge because there are no two banks of a river. You're thinking, that can't be right. The photon clearly traveled a distance. It started there and ended here. Things happened between those points. Things happened for you. You watched the photon. You measured its journey. You recorded its position at different points along its path. For you, there was a before and an after. For you, duration happened. For the photon, there is no for the photon. That phrase refers to nothing. Let me put it in the math. In special relativity, the time experienced by a moving object, its proper time is calculated using the Lorentz factor. For a massive object, this gives you a number, a duration, an answer. For an object at light speed, the denominator of the Lorentz factor goes to zero. Not a small number, zero. And dividing by zero doesn't give you infinity. It doesn't give you a lot. It gives you a category error. The calculation doesn't fail because the answer is too big. It fails because the question doesn't apply. Time doesn't stop for light. Time is not a property light possesses. That should genuinely unsettle you. Let me tell you about a specific photon. In 2016, the Hubble Space Telescope detected light from a galaxy called GN-1. That light left the galaxy 13.4 billion years ago. The universe itself is only 13.8 billion years old. This photon was emitted when the universe was 400 million years old, a cosmic infant. That photon traveled for 13.4 billion years. It crossed the entire observable universe. It watched, except it didn't watch. It can't watch. Galaxies form, stars ignite, planets coalesce, life emerge, civilizations rise. Someone built a telescope and pointed exactly where that photon was heading. 13.4 billion years of cosmic time. And for that photon, all of it. Every galaxy, every supernova, every epoch of cosmic evolution happened in no time at all. The photon from GN-1 and a photon from your phone flashlight have something profoundly in common. Neither one experienced a journey. For both, emission and absorption were the same event. The universe aged, the photon didn't. Not because the photon aged slowly, because aging is not something photons do. This isn't poetry. The Hubble data is real. The redshift measurements are real. The math is unambiguous. We're not interpreting this. We're reading it off the equations like a receipt. Now, here's where it gets truly dangerous for your worldview. Think about what this means for the concept of now. You have a now, a present moment. It moves forward. It's always been your most basic experience of being alive. One moment follows the next, the nowness of things. Light has no now. It has no present moment. It has no this, then that. For light, every point along its journey is the same point in time. The star that emitted it and the eye that absorbs it exist in the same instant. Now ask yourself, which perspective is more fundamental? Yours? The one trapped in a body made of atoms, dragged through time at maximum speed because you're sitting still in space, or the photons, the one that sees that as the raw structure of space-time without the filter of duration. You want to say yours is more real because you experience it. But experience requires time, and time is not fundamental. Time is what happens to things with mass. Things that spend their speed budget on temporal motion instead of spatial motion. Time is what you get as a consolation prize for not being light. You live in time because you have mass. You have mass because you interact with the Higgs field. If you didn't interact with the Higgs field, you'd be massless. You'd travel at sea, and you'd have no experience of duration whatsoever. Your entire existence, memory, aging, cause and effect, the feeling of seconds passing is a consequence of mass. Mass is what traps you in time. Light, which has no mass, is free. Remember what I told you at the start, that you sitting still right now are moving at the speed of light? Here's where that becomes terrifying. You're spending your entire speed budget on time. Every last unit of c is being poured into temporal motion. You are rocketing through time at the maximum possible rate. This is why you age. This is why you experience cause and effect. This is why the second hand moves. You are a time traveler, traveling forward, at the speed of light, through the time dimension. And you can't slow down. You can't stop. You can't even choose the direction. Your only freedom, your only throttle, is spatial motion. Move through space and you bleed off temporal speed. Move fast enough and time slows to a trickle. Move at c through space and time stops entirely. This is the trade-off. This is the budget. This is the one absolute, non-negotiable engraved in the bedrock of reality rule that governs everything. The speed of light isn't a speed limit, it's the speed of existence. Everything, every particle, every person, every planet travels at c through space-time always. Without exception, the only question is, how do you split it? Now here's what nobody in physics will tell you in a TED Talk. We don't know why. We know that the speed of light is constant. We know that space-time is one fabric. We know the budget is fixed. We've measured it, engineered around it, built civilizations on top of it. But nobody, not Einstein, not Feynman, not Witten, not any physicist alive today, can tell you why c is the number it is. Why 299,792,458 meters per second and not some other number? Why the budget exists at all? It appears in the equations as a constant, a given, an axiom. It's the one thing the universe refuses to explain. Everything else, gravity, electromagnetism, the nuclear forces, can be derived from deeper principles. The speed of light just is. Some physicists think it emerges from the structure of space-time itself, that asking why is c what it is like asking why does a triangle have three sides. The question misunderstands what the thing is. Others think c is a contingent fact. That in other universes, the speed of existence might be different, and the rules of physics would reshape themselves accordingly. We don't know. And anyone who tells you they do is selling something other than physics. Turn on your phone flashlight one last time. Watch the light hit the wall. You just created billions of particles that will never know what it feels like to be created. Each one of them left your phone and arrived at the wall in the same instant. Their instant, not yours. For you, it was 10 nanoseconds. For them, the word nanosecond refers to nothing. You're sitting in a room full of time-free messengers, photons bouncing off every surface, carrying information about color and shape and distance, reporting dutifully to your eyes, and none of them have ever experienced a single moment. The light illuminating this screen traveled from your display to your retina in about 1 nanosecond. That photon was born and died in the same event. No middle, no during, no passage. It was never young. It will never be old. The concept doesn't apply. You aged reading this sentence. Every photon that delivered these words to your brain did not. And here's the question I want to leave you with. The one I can't answer, the one nobody can. If time is what happens to things with mass, if duration is a side effect of interacting with the Higgs field, then what are we really? We're not beings who move through time, we're beings produced by time. Time isn't the river we float on, time is the water we're made of. And light, the thing that carries all information, that connects all events, that has crossed every distance in the universe without experiencing any of it, light is the thing that exists outside the water entirely. So what's more real? The fish or the ocean, it doesn't know it's swimming in. Look at the light in your room. You're staring at eternity, it just doesn't know it's eternal, because knowing takes time, and time is the one thing it has never had. Which part broke your brain the hardest? Tell me in the comments, and if you want to go deeper into why mass exists at all, why the Higgs field traps us in time, why there might be particles that travel faster than light backwards through time, I'll take you there next. Subscribe so you don't miss that one.